Underground cities are just cool. Entire networks of hidden passages and hideouts carved deep underground. From Coober Pedy in Australia to ancient cities that sank into the sea, these are amazing hidden underground cities that shouldn't exist. Alright, let's start with Coober Pedy. That name sounds completely made up, and it's going to sound even nuttier when I describe it. If you've never heard of this place, it's this wild little town in the Australian outback, which fits. Where else in the world would you find a town named Coober Pedy? So people lived underground here, and there's a very good reason for that. The place is absolutely scorching in the summer, pushing 100 degrees Fahrenheit or 38 degrees Celsius and well beyond. So if you were above ground all the time, you'd pretty much melt. But they figured out a pretty cool workaround: build living spaces underground. You'll find that a lot of the town is dug into the rock. And here's how all of this started. So back in 1915, a young guy named William H. Smith was just casually messing around looking for gold when he came across this huge load of opals. From then on, people came from all over to mine for opal, and pretty soon Coober Pedy turned into the opal capital of the world. So miners and their families started digging out homes to escape the brutal heat, and these homes became known as dugouts. Today, about 60% of the people still live in these underground homes, even though the town is modernized now, but it works. The ground in Coober Pedy is soft sandstone, and when you dig into it, the temperature stays cool in the summer and warm in the winter. It's like a natural air conditioner. So yeah, Coober Pedy is one of the most bizarre but practical places you'll ever hear about. And the town has all the usual amenities too. You got schools, hospitals, even a golf course. People come here for tourism as well. You can sleep in a hotel carved into the ground, which would definitely be a unique experience. Now we jump to Iran with Kish Underground City. Kish Island in the Persian Gulf has a fascinating underground area known as the Kairos, which dates back over 2,500 years ago. It was originally built as a water management system and has been turned into an attraction that blends history with modern tourism. The whole system is carved into the island's coral stone. And back in the day, it served a practical purpose. It was used to store and manage water. But as time went on, it became more than just a water reserve. People started using it as shelter from the intense heat on the surface. Today, the underground city is being renovated and it's becoming a bit of a tourist destination. It's huge. We're talking over 100,000 square feet of space, and they're building restaurants, shops, and other modern amenities down there. People can check out how ancient Persians figured out how to live comfortably in the desert long before air conditioning was even a thought. It's kind of mind-blowing to think about how these ancient people were able to create something so functional and yet so beautiful out of just stone and earth. Next up, we have Özkonak underground city in Turkey. This one is cool because it's literally carved into volcanic rock. The city was rediscovered in 1972, and since then archaeologists have been uncovering more and more of it. It has 4 levels open to the public, but there are 6 more levels that remain untouched. The city was used as a hideout, mostly for protection from invaders back in the day. What's really interesting about this place too are all the defenses. For example, the tunnels have these holes in the ceilings that could be used to drop hot sand on any invaders trying to break in. It's one of those places that gives you a real sense of how creative and resourceful people were when they needed to protect themselves. It's also massive, stretching out far enough to house up to 60,000 people if they needed to hide for a while. So if you're ever in Turkey, definitely add this place to your list of destinations. Next up is the Atlit-Yam underwater city off the coast of Israel. This one is insane because it's submerged beneath the Mediterranean Sea. Archaeologists discovered it in 1984, and it's believed to be over 7,000 years old. It's one of the oldest submerged cities ever found, or what's left of it anyway. And it gives us a fascinating glimpse into life long before we even started thinking about building cities. Atlit-Yam was home to early farming and fishing communities. They built their homes out of simple materials like mud and sticks, and the people lived off the resources of the sea. But something happened around 6900 BCE, possibly rising sea levels or a huge tidal wave, which caused the village to sink into the sea. And today the ruins lie beneath the waves, where divers and archaeologists have been able to recover artifacts like tools, pottery, and even human remains. It's a window into another time when people were just starting to figure out how to build civilizations, and that is really cool. Leptis Magna is another fascinating city. This is an ancient Roman one in modern day Libya. Atlit-Yam. It was one of the most important cities in the Roman Empire, founded around the 7th century BCE. It became especially important when Emperor Septimius Severus, who was born nearby, made it his hometown. During its peak, Leptis Magna had everything: grand amphitheaters, bathhouses, marketplaces, and temples. The cool thing about Leptis Magna is that it's incredible at being preserved. For centuries, it was buried under sand, and no one really knew it was there. It wasn't until the 1920s that archaeologists unearthed it, and when they did, they found a near-perfect example of Roman architecture. Today, it's one of the best preserved Roman sites you can visit. You can wander around the Grand Theater, the Basilica, and the marketplace, and it'll make you feel like you're in ancient Rome. At least I'd have to presume. I've never actually been there. I'd love to go, though. I mean, some of these buildings are over 2,000 years old. Moving on to Beijing, China. There's a really cool underground city that was built during the Cold War. The Chinese government built it as a nuclear fallout shelter, and it's huge, spanning 85 square kilometers or about 33 square miles. It's a secret underground world, complete with living spaces, shops, hospitals, and schools, all connected by tunnels. The plan was that in case of a nuclear attack, the population would hide in the tunnels and live there for as long as they'd need to. What I find extra interesting about this underground city is how it would have been accessed. Some of the tunnels were hidden in plain sight. They had entrances inside shops, restaurants, and alleyways, so if something went down, people would have a quick escape route. The crazy thing is that even though it was built for such a grim purpose, today you can actually go on guided tours of the Beijing underground city. It's said to be pretty eerie down there, but incredible without a doubt. Havre is a small town in Montana that has its own underground tunnels, built way back in the early 1900s. The tunnels were used for all sorts of shady things. During the Prohibition era, the tunnels served as a route for illegal alcohol to be smuggled into town, and they were also home to secret bars, gambling spots, and even a brothel. Today, you can visit these underground tunnels with the Havre Beneath the Streets tour. It looks like a pretty fun time. I mean, it's two really cool things: cowboys and hidden underground cities. Even though the tunnels were used for a lot of sneaky businesses, they also gave people shelter from the harsh Montana winters. But I bet that if those walls could talk, they'd have some pretty wild stories to tell. Portland's got its own version of shady underground tunnels too, known as the Shanghai Tunnels. These tunnels were built in the 19th century and were used by human traffickers to, well, Shanghai people, meaning they'd kidnap them and force them to work on ships. Pretty messed up, but what makes these tunnels so interesting is how they stretch beneath the city. There were trap doors in places like bars and hotels, and the story goes that baddies would use them to snatch people and drag them into the tunnels where they'd be taken off to sea. Today, the Shanghai Tunnels are a dark and eerie reminder of a really awful time in Portland's history. You can go on a tour, which is a bit creepy, I gotta imagine, but also kind of fascinating because it gives you a real sense of how these people lived and worked in secret. And of course, it comes as no surprise that people say the place is haunted. Vegas is all glitz and glamour, right? But beneath the surface lies another world, the Las Vegas tunnels. These tunnels were originally built for flood control, but over time they became home to a whole underground community. It's a tough place to live. It's dark, damp, and very dangerous, but for a lot of homeless people, it's safer to be in this community underground than alone on the street. Plus, it gives them shelter from the scorching desert heat. The tunnels are really long, stretching for miles beneath the city. It's quite the contrast to the luxury hotels and casinos above. It's a side of the city that most people just never see. The underground city of Nushabad is found in Iran's central desert. The city's name, Nushabad, meaning city of cold, tasty water, comes from a Sasanian king who once visited the region. After drinking water from a local well, he found it especially refreshing and clear. He then ordered a city to be built around it, which became known as Nushabad. The underground city was built to escape the harsh heat and to protect the townsfolk from raids. The city had an extensive network of underground passages, allowing people to hide and move around without being seen. The passages connected different parts of the city, making it possible for people to live underground for days if they needed to. The underground city had 3 levels, designed so that the upper levels could be more easily defended. The curving passages made it easier to ambush enemies, and there were hidden traps. Fun, like rotating stones that would fall into deep pits if triggered. Really cool stuff.